this work session to order. Carrie, will you call the roll?
Counselor Pietzold.
Here.
Counselor Smallwood.
Here.
Counselor Hamlin.
Here.
Counselor Lee.
Here.
Counselor Exner.
Here.
Counselor Schultz. Here. Mayor Beland.
Here. All right, tonight at our work session, we'll start off as we always do with our agenda review, and then we have Dave Snyder here to discuss some proposed changes to our outdoor seating SDCs. Tonight, so I get through here, well, obviously, as per usual, we'll have time for public comment. Anybody have any issues with, we're gonna have a presentation on Oregon impact. What are we talking about there, Jordan?
I think they were just presenting
It's an
an
award
award
for
to
an individual?
for a local individual or local company. I can't remember
Okay.
exactly, but they weren't able to make it, but they still wanted to let us know. Shouldn't take very long.
Okay, outstanding. Then we'll have any questions on our minutes that are in the consent agenda from the last meeting? Okay. And then we'll have our resolution for our master fee schedule, as well as the supplemental budget. And then we'll get into a conversation on our ordinances for our public safety fee and our first reading of that. Okay? New business, energy savings performance contract for the water meter audit testing. Any questions or comments on that before we get into it tonight? All right, and then we'll just have our typical committee council reports, city manager report, and then we'll go into an executive session after the meeting. So with that, let's go ahead and start our conversation with Dave on our outdoor seating SDCs.
So this came about because we had a pre-app with the owner of Boring Brewing. We wanted to add some outdoor seating in the little area where, if you're familiar with scooters, the business that was there before, same space they have set up for. He got a little bit of what did I say, scooters? Oh, I'm sorry, crawlers.
I was worried for a second.
So, needless to say, he got a little bit of sticker shock from this. We were, the SDC bill would be $36.50 on that, and he didn't understand why it would cost that much money to put a few tables outside. But because of the way this all worked out, I decided it might be a good idea to do a little bit of research to see if we were the norm or the outlier with regard to charging for SDCs for outdoor seating. And what I found, I contacted 4 communities. You can see their responses in the staff report from Canby, Oregon City, Gresham, and Estacada. And I found that we are, for the most part, the outlier. Most of these other communities do not charge this. And I need to be clear about this, for existing restaurants only, not for new construction. And so we started.
Quickly, so you mean just for an existing business that then expands into an outdoor seating?
Correct.
And
correct.
so if I'm a brand new business that's going to incorporate outdoor seating, those seats are normally worked into the SDC
Yes.
plan?
And we're not proposing to change that. For somebody building a new building, say our friends from the brewery that were out here a couple of years ago wanted to build a new building and have outdoor seating, we would still sell those seats for that. But anyway, we talked about it a little bit, and it came to the conclusion, I think, generally speaking, that the revenue that we would end up foregoing here wouldn't really have that big of an impact on urban renewal, particularly. But it would be, for the amount of goodwill that we sacrifice by collecting these SDCs, we thought it might be a good idea to talk about maybe waiving. So we were interested in your take.
Well, I'm very interested in it. I know I made the comment first from reading the staff report, going, why do we do this? Because it's only sunny for only a couple weeks of the year, and I know we enjoy as a family to go down to eat outside there at a pizza place there. Smoky Hearth out there in the parking. I mean, it's nothing fancy. It's a couple parking spots, but it is packed, and enjoying the outside aspect of that is draw in more business, like you've pointed out, for the revenue that we'll be bringing into our community, and others, the restaurants, to just be able to sell outside when it's nice.
If we were talking about costs to us, there's really very little difference in our actual costs between the two, right?
So I guess sometimes in the implementation, so like, let's say I, was starting a new business and I opened it up in December. Why wouldn't I, under what's being proposed, why wouldn't I wait until after I've become an established business to start my outdoor seating so that I could sidestep the SDC charge?
Well, I think you would, let me see if I
You know
understand.
that-
Moving into, well, it's for existing, it would be based more on the building, not the business, so, for an existing building. is the-
Yeah, what he's saying is that they built the building and then just waiting there.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Which is someone like me would do.
Well, it's the same thing I was thinking of when you made
Yeah.
a comment.
Right.
But it's probably, advantages when you're doing a design, whether you're incorporating outdoor seating in that initial design for a building or not, or tacking it on
Right.
later, and you're probably doing the math that paying architecture fees again a year later to design outdoor seating, then that looks like it was added into a parking lot, and could have been part of a nice warm garden,
Yeah.
I don't know how many businesses would follow through. with
You'd have to
trying
think
make that
pretty
guy.
far ahead to save yourself $5,000. If you're thinking of building.
If you're in a restaurant at 5,000, that could.
So, why not?
Yeah.
What's wrong with just saying even new construction?
Right.
Why not?
Right.
Just say no SDCs for any outdoor park, tables and such, whether you got a brand new building or you got an old building that we're trying to convert over to. And to some degree, I would say I really love that idea because so many times you have a lot of startup costs, you have a lot of, who knows what your business will be, bring income in, you got a year or two down the road. So then after that, you do really well, so expand out, put your tables out front. I think in terms of the city, I like the idea of not any,
So,
whether new construction or old construction.
so I'm a huge proponent of this, so now I'm just playing devil's advocate,
Okay.
right? So I'm like a McMiniman style deal, right? So where outdoor seating is a major portion of my business, or an expanded version of the food carts, which I am curious on how we allocated SDCs to that, would we qualify them as outdoor seating or not, right? So I guess my point being, is every business we're talking about here, outdoor seating is an addition and like kind of, it's a new portion or of their business. What about those businesses where outdoor seating really is their occupancy?
But think about though, is I think Jeremy's right, is we have, I mean, a couple of weeks, but I suspect it's only a 3-month period where you really have adequate weather
Right.
for
Mhm.
outdoors. So even the McMinimans folks, they really close them down when the rain and snow starts. And they would here anyway, I think. So I'm not thinking that it's gonna be a year-round income, but surely a good thing for the city.
I go Jeremy and Jim.
Yeah, I was gonna play the devil advocate and say the exact same thing Stan said, cause I could see, that you gave the same examples I was gonna do is, the food carts, another one that would come in, that type of thing, and you may have some pressure on the, environment just to get around, that, you got the Happy Valley type of food carts, or you got the 82nd food carts, right? And, but, so I see both sides of it. I think having it attached to a building, it's one of those things when you have an attached building per se, and you're having that is maybe different than if you have no buildings really attached like the food carts, because it doesn't have that. That's a year-round type of process, but.
Jan?
Well, in thinking of being a devil's advocate, the one thing that comes to mind is parking. If you were going to have had a parking lot for your business and now you won't,
Yeah,
that puts more burden on the city.
yeah.
So that's maybe the one factor that would be a little bit different.
Just with that though, I think that can be controlled in other formats and other codes. So you're gonna have to have a certain amount of parking for your establishment no matter what. So if you take it all up in booths or permanently for like 3-month period, I think that would be controlled in another way. I'm just thinking to myself, we have maybe 4 or 5 currently outdoor seating spots in the city of Sandy, maybe more than that, but certainly not 10. What happens if we do not do SDCs on anybody? Wouldn't we be encouraging businesses and to come in with that kind of format? And wouldn't that be one of the things we want to do?
Right.
Not just
Yeah.
6 months ago, we said we were going to be encouraging businesses, and to me, this looks like a way to do that.
Yeah.
And if
I
I
agree.
could speak to Dan's point just really quickly, there's 3 businesses I know right now that would, one that's already established outdoor seating that we haven't assessed SDCs for, and 2 others that I think would do it immediately. In all 3 of those cases, no existing parking. So-
They have no parking?
No, they would not utilize any parking, they wouldn't
Okay.
convert any parking into outdoor seating.
Yeah.
I would like to add that the parking is a self-regulating thing too, in some areas, like, you take all your parking and where your own people gonna park, they have to go a long ways to get
Yeah.
to your establishment, you eat up on your parking, so.
Is there a definition for outdoor seating too, that, I'm just thinking, if you're constructing, you can have outdoor seating year round, you have the heaters,
Yeah.
Yeah.
covers and things like that, which,
I think Mount Hood Cigars is proposing something like that. I know their file's incomplete right now, but, yeah.
It's a structure.
If you do outdoor seating in December and January, you have a lot of other things going on. You have roofs, you have sides, you have the heaters, and there's quite a bit
Tents.
of extra effort, yeah, tents.
mhm.
And if it's in places of the parking, I think there's ways we can control that, but, you know, eventually that's, not like it's gonna become indoor seating eventually, because we were just talking with, I can't remember if Kelly is here or not.
He's just directly behind you.
If you're here, figure out who's behind you, so.
Actually, he ducked when you looked back.
We were talking about some of the downtown Portland outdoor seating that has grown from just outdoors because of the weather, they put a roof over, and after a while that wasn't enough, so they put this flexible plastic over that snaps on. Pretty soon you end up with a pretty established kind of seating that's not really outdoor anymore. And that would be one of those questions that maybe we should look at too, is when does it become permanent seating indoor? When you start adding things to that, when does it become taxable?
Bethany had her hand up.
So, I know, I think it was in your staff report maybe, or the, whatever report that, so for Boring Brewing, he wasn't increasing his occupancy?
Correct.
Is that generally the case with this stuff, or if we assess them at the beginning of the restaurant, you know, starting up, would we account for that occupancy as well, and could it be more? Or are we saying
Yeah.
that it'll always just be tables from inside being moved outside for 3 months and then back in?
That's a good question. I would assume, from a business owner's perspective, that if they could do it the way that Bill was proposing, they would want to, because, well, actually, I guess that's not necessarily true. That's a good question. I think as so long as we don't go over any thresholds,
Okay.
like Bill, so in that particular case, Bill, when he opened his business right off, he set his occupancies at 49,
Mhm.
which is right at the level below, I think it would add another restroom or something like that. He doesn't have anywhere near that kind of business in there, so it made sense to him to move the you know, just a couple of tables and
Right.
chairs outside. And he didn't want to go over the threshold because he didn't want to have bathrooms. So.
Okay.
He also felt like maybe he wasn't getting more people coming in, they were just sitting at a different
Right.
portion of his,
Sure.
of his restaurant. Kelly's been kind of rearing to go now.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, so, just a rough calculation in my head, we have at least 20 upper seating areas. Yeah, it's kind of surprising when you start thinking about them.
But yeah, 'cause like Tollgate has one table, right? You gotta count all those.
Mountain Mocha.
Or
It actually
these,
has 2 different outdoor seating
okay.
areas, but,
Yeah.
yeah, even like a place like Two Brothers has like 3 tables
Right,
out there.
right.
So I think we have at least 20. And then my preference from a process standpoint of issuing building permits and stuff would just be to waive all of them. I think it's just a lot cleaner than like,
Like
To me, that
focusing
would
on
be
the core, instead of just focusing on like the core, is that what you're saying, or?
no, I would just like, if you were doing outdoor seating, I don't know how Mike feels about this, but how I would feel about it is, if you're doing outdoor seating, it's just a whole waive. You just don't, like, we're just gonna waive SDCs.
Mhm.
Just cause I think it does get kind of complicated, like Carl's bringing up. Once they like put plexiglass or some other pergola over the top of it,
Mhm.
is it indoor? If it is part, I don't know, it just gets very confusing for me.
I think this is peculiar to the way we calculate SDCs for sanitary sewer. It's based on a table, and, you know, like for retail use, it's based on the number of square feet of retail or office space, or the number of employees, the number of gas pumps for a gas station, the number of seats for a restaurant. It's, you know, it's been in the code for many years, and so whether it's an accurate way to gauge the amount of sanitary sewage generated by a business. That's what happened here is, you know, the code says 1 per every 8 seats. A 32-seat restaurant is 4 equivalent residential units. They were gonna add some, so we tried to, you know, we did try and soften the blow by, you know, just eliminate it to 25% of the fee. Figuring that, you know, outdoor dining is only available quarter of the year at best. And, so, you know, so I think it would be better maybe to change the way we calculate system development charges for sanitary sewer. This was also a transportation SDC, so we did the same thing. We said, you know, we called it a high-quality sit-down restaurant, which is the smallest traffic generator in the book, and we did the 25% too. So part of that was a transportation. I think doing a blanket thing gets you into, you know, we should maybe limit it to a type of use. You know, you could have like the Clark County Amphitheater show up, and you know, if you've ever tried to drive back on I-5 at night, they have a concert, either north or south on I-5. When they have a concert, it can be kind of a mess. So, you know, that's maybe an extreme example, but that's outdoor seating. They say, hey, wait a minute, everybody sits outdoors. We don't have to go transportation SDC or sanitary sewer SDC. So maybe we relate it to maybe the size of the primary use, you know, that exceeds more than X percent or half of what the primary use is, then, you know, you might have to look at it again. As long as it's less than this, you know, if it's really an ancillary use to the primary use, it's probably not that big a deal. But a blanket thing, in that extreme example about the Clark County Amphitheater, is something you can run into.
Could you give the background on the food carts?
The food carts, we did that based on fixture counts. And so that's really how most of these do it. And we've been wanting to do this for a while, and I think that might be the best way for sanitary sewer, because it bears more relationship to the amount of water that goes in and waste that goes out. You know, there's a table in the plumbing code that assigns a value to each fixture unit, and it adds up to a total, and then you convert that into equivalent unit residential units. Because you know, the number of gas pumps in the gas station, you could have a 40-pump gas station, and they pay a substantial sewer SDC, but there isn't, like the Fred Meyer fueling station, there isn't even a place to go to that.
Right.
But they do have a sewer
Or that they
connection.
tell you about.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sorry, we don't have one. But anyway, so, you know, that's, you know, I think that's what we need to get away from, is this antiquated table that we've been using in the code, at least for sanitary sewer. And then, you know, maybe have some relationship between the primary use and the secondary use, or the indoor use versus the outdoor use.
Lori, did you have something?
Well, just just real quick, in regard to this exact thing that we're kind of discussing, in your report, you mentioned that Gresham waived SDCs unless it changed their meter. So if it changed the meter that they were using, increased the meter,
right.
then they might charge, you know, a different, or charge an SDC at that point, and that might be something that, you know, we look at, is just determining where that breaking point is.
Jeremy and Carl.
Yeah, I like what Mike was presenting there, you know, a percentage of the main building, you know, so you get away from that. As far as what Carl was talking about with what they're doing in Portland, you know, you get the size of the roof and stuff. Well, I think that anything when we do any physical structures as roof and tents and those type of things, do need to come back for a different type of permit for structural, making sure that that's not, you know, just kind of put up haphazardly or whatever. We've done that in the past, and so that, but that wouldn't necessarily be an SDC charge. That would just be a permit, you know, inspection type thing to make sure it's meets the code that way.
Carl?
Yeah, just I think a little bit, just to add on what Lori and Jeremy are talking about, is as we get more and more popular with those stores, if they consistently are above those numbers for bathrooms, I think we have to figure out a way to ensure that would be calculated, because you're certainly, whether you've got indoor, outdoor, if you got 55 people and you cross that 49 line, you want bathrooms appropriate for that. You don't want them.
It might be self-regulated, people waiting
Might
in
be,
line.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
Well, it's like going to church, you never fill the church up, it's only 80%. So, but I think that wouldn't be something as a business owner I would want to make a plan, my business plan. I want to continue to keep ahead of my income and people. So if I knew I'm hitting that 50 all the time, I'm gonna start looking at bathrooms. So that's when we get into more SDCs, because we're constructing, right?
Bethany?
I just wondered if we could word it sort of as a, you know, if it's open air seating, then we're not gonna charge these SDCs. And that could include like an umbrella or whatever. But if we're gonna have a roof for a tent or something like that, then it's no longer really open air, so maybe then it's more of a thing.
Jan?
I would like to see Mike sketch something out for us. It's got a good idea, and what Lori was saying goes along with that.
Does, you know, Gresham always got a bunch of publicity when the economy went down for waiving all their startup costs and permits and SDCs for their main street court. I think, now, didn't we, back then, we also made the decision to waive some fees and permits. Did we not? Did we ever? So do we have any incentives or anything that we waive as far as like, do we have programs like this where we're encouraging patios or anything by waiving SDC permits for our
So
core?
we do. In the central, the C1 zone, any change in use that does not increase the footprint of the structure, for structures 6,000 square feet or less,
Mhm.
we don't, you know. If you have a dentist's office and you turn it into a restaurant, there's a bigger demand for traffic and sewage and whatever and water. So that's a change in use. The building's the same size. So to avoid that in the C, only in the C1 district where the, you know, we had a lot of vacant buildings at one time, and we still do. We did change that so that as long as you don't change the size of the building, a change in use doesn't trigger any additional SDCs, even though you might go from a very low intensity use to a high intensity use. If the building, if you limit to that building size, it's probably not gonna make a big, and that was the other thing, it was self-regulating. I think when the council considered this, and the issue was parking, a lot of the downtown businesses don't have any off-street parking. So you're never gonna get super intense use in there just because there's no place to park. If you have a 6,000 square foot building on a 7,000 square foot lot, you know, it's never really gonna get that intense.
Plus, we have small lots in the downtown, which we knew.
So we do have that.
I guess I would just say, so, and it did, you know, this kind of opens up the conversation of, you know, right now we're talking about patio seating, the waiving of SDCs, and well, we don't want to get in this routine nature of waiving SDCs because we need those and we charge for those for a reason. When we talk about trying to grow our community into kind of one where people stop and becomes more walkable and shopping and retail, I would just say that maybe our council needs to continue to dialogue and consider and talk about incentivizing certain types of businesses that we would like to see in our downtown to, you know, get some incentives, whether it's waiving a fee or permit, an SDC, or even, you know, all those kinds of things. So just things that we should be kind of thinking about getting a little bit more purposeful and strategic with our fee structure in that regard. But, you know, our budget's tight, so all I'm saying there is that sometimes you might have to do the Robin Hood method, where you're, you know, steal from the rich to give to the poor kind of a thing. You know, where maybe we assess a little bit more somewhere else in order to give a little bit of leniency towards a more strategic initiative.
So what is the economic impact of waiving everything? We've got 20, it's called 20 downtown businesses.
20 total in the whole city.
20 would that have outdoor seating?
Yeah.
Each one of them is $3,000 and $5,000 or something of that sort. We're not talking about reimbursing some of these older businesses that have already paid the SDCs, are we?
Well, actually, we were suggesting reimbursing those who had paid this buy-in, which would be scooters, Red Shed, and what's the?
Smoky Hearts.
Okay.
Which is, I think, in the very small amount for the goodwill, one,
Yeah.
business friendly, driving people in to come and eat on, you know.
Yeah, reimbursing all three of those businesses would cost us a grand total of about $11,000.
And we want these businesses to be as profitable as possible so that they survive and grow and,
Yeah.
and more
And they have a very short time frame.
But then what does that mean in terms of year to year?
we collect those SDCs only once, correct? Okay, so there's no additional charges. So it would just be new buildings coming in. So the impact is not a very big impact.
So let's just start to try to get this some clarity about. So are we talking about moving away from existing businesses that expand into it, or doing a wholesale, whether you're new or you're an existing business having the ability to have a patio with SDCs? Yeah.
I think I like the formula that you were talking about, like, you know, if you're existing, you know, you want to add on, you know, it's not more than X percentage of your building footprint, 25% or 50% or whatever. Some of it's gonna be dictated by how many parking spots you take up, you want people to be there. But for new businesses, I think, you know, it depends on the exact same thing. Is it a structure, you know, that's an awning and that type of thing? Well, that's, that maybe the open air that you pointed out, I think was a good definition of that. And is being built in the overall scheme of that new building, for that context of it, so.
So I guess I'm gonna kind of look towards all staff and say, are you kind of getting what we're laying down here? We like it. Obviously, let's set up some boundaries and parameters around it, kind of what Mike alluded to. But I think we're all kind of in unison that we really like the idea. We'd like to move forward with it. Let's not let it get too out of control.
Can I ask one
Yeah, of course.
clarifying question?
Yeah.
So I think, honestly, when you start, I just will say one thing and then I'll ask the question.
Yeah.
So I think once you start putting too many parameters on it, it gets very confusing to the businesses. So I think it should just be something very cut and dry, like, because once we say, is it a percentage of the overall indoor use, then they have to do a calculation, and as David could testify, then they get confused, kind of upset with us. And then we just say, like, do you have 50 people or 25 people or whatever you want it to be, and just say, is it gonna be under or over that, and just make it a clear number
Yeah.
as the threshold? I think it's very easy and identifiable.
Sure.
So I'd recommend something like that instead of a percent. The other thing that I kind of want to ask you guys is, what do you want to do in the meantime about businesses that are not in compliance and have not paid SDCs, but they've put out outdoor seating recently? There's at least one of them.
So your second question's tough. And the reason for that is we have some businesses that I'm guessing have complied,
Yes, those three that we mentioned earlier.
and we have some businesses that have asked forgiveness later, that would try to adopt under this new framework. And I think that the ones that have complied could say, hey, these were the rules of the game, and we complied, and so didn't comply, and that's not fair.
I don't know who this one individual, or it doesn't really matter, but I think the question is what the way I read the staff report is some of them have been there for a long time. It maybe wasn't part of the code, it wasn't one that was enforced years ago. I know for 20 years, I'll just throw one out there, I can't think of it, just down the road next to Two Brothers, that's the Thai place has some outdoor seating, which you brought up in the report, and I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that one. Yeah, it does have some.
It used to be a shoe repair shop that my grandfather owned.
Wow.
They have outdoor seating at that?
Yeah, and they do
Well,
outdoor shooting.
yeah, for the mountain festival parade.
Horseshoe.
That's where I used to watch it.
But I think if we look back at what our main focus of why we're even doing this, just wanted to build our economy, build this, and so are we promoting it, even though maybe some of them have been grandfathered in because they've done it forever, or maybe they just did it not knowingly, or even if they did, to go and police that around now is gonna take a lot of energy and create some maybe bad will for it. And I don't know who you were referring to.
No, I don't either, I'm just saying,
Oh, I think you were referring
I can
to one
only
business.
guess.
I mean, I'll just tell you this. So
Yeah.
since those other three, Bunsen Brewer has put out stuff,
Yeah.
and they have not applied for permit, they have not
Oh,
paid
yeah.
SDCs, and they did it after the other three applied and paid. So, and I've just been kind of like hoping, oh, council will adopt this SDC waiver, and then we won't even really have to enforce it. But if somebody else caught wind of that, they could ask, and it would be a legitimate question of, right now, they should pay, so.
So that's interesting, because I know that they came in wanting a food cart at their location years ago, but regardless of that, I think that's another venue where, what's that?
He did actually come in and ask about the food cart.
Oh, yeah, when
I
we
suggested that, and he said, I'll never will.
We never did it, but it was part of our whole allowing food carts around the city, and that one came up. That was years and years ago, but I think back to who's our customers and who are our people, I mean, is our community, and they're using it now to come back and And like, whether they did it or not, I think will have a negative effect, and it'd be easier to just wipe it clean.
So my suggestion would be to just reimburse the other three now.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
So there's only three.
and then we have equity.
And then Bunsen Brewer, we just don't do anything for the time being as far as SDCs.
Yeah.
We haven't done anything in terms of,
I don't need, if we waive this, then we're fine.
Yeah, Bethany?
Yeah, I feel like if we reimburse these three guys and we
Then we
just
have equity.
ignore the rest of it, I don't see how that could be an issue
I'm in.
anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
before we
then-
go forward, I'm gonna speak whether I like it or not.
Yeah.
Have we done anything to, tell them that we're gonna punish them?
And I have not contacted them.
I'm not talking, they just ignored it.
But then
I'm
I
in the
think
same
we
boat.
should
We really
adopt a
need
new
to-
ordinance based
Thank you.
on
I
what
was a
Mike
little
was
frustrated there,
saying.
nobody's recognizing.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
you go.
yeah.
And in the meantime, would
Oh.
we be willing to let the
Yeah, let's call them
Yeah.
up and
Other
say,
people-
let's shove some tables outside.
move
Tomorrow, we'll
forward
come and
putting
visit.
something on
Yeah, we'll
the
be
other
there.
for-
Yeah.
Council will go around.
So, now to your first question though, on the occupancy limit, right? So how many, we base it on tables or chairs right now? What is it?
Seats.
Seats.
For
The
law.
SDC, not, I don't know how they calculate.
Okay.
It's a building code.
So
thing, they
how many
calculate.
seats approximately are at Red Shed, just to give me a visual picture of what we're
On
talking about?
just on the outside area or the whole place?
The outside,
Just outside?
It's 40 myself.
40?
40?
Yeah, that sounds about
How
right.
does he know this?
I know. So then I gotta guess,
There on Thursday.
that Smoky Hearth is probably about 40, 30, 40, Smoky Hearth.
I can't remember.
They're spreading
There's
pretty
one
far.
place, yeah.
Red
He's
Shed.
a rich man. I can tell you,
Shed.
those people are not, I just went there myself, people are not sitting inside.
No.
You go up there, I
Yeah.
gotta sit inside, I leave.
Yeah,
I'm
but I
done.
think they have more outdoor seats in the.
Right, but they're
Yeah.
not seating people inside, right?
Right.
Because we left because we couldn't sit outside, it was too full.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So what's council thinking on that simple threshold that we were talking about earlier with Kelly? Is it 100? Is it 50? Is it 75?
You mean the number?
Yeah.
I think if it changes your occupancy.
You know, if you need to change occupancy to have additional bathrooms
Yeah.
or whatever facilities, parking, if they have a couple, three things, it would make it, then you have to start thinking about what that means. If it's 50.
I think we're getting far away from the clear code that Kelly was hoping for. Not that we have to give Kelly everything he's hoping for, but I think he was looking for kind of a real easy,
Math?
non-complicated.
And I
Yeah.
agree, because I think that people wanna read something that's just very simple and
Yeah.
I totally
guess in
agree.
my mind, that's
They
what
don't
we
wanna
did
do
there,
that.
'cause it's just a number,
If-
just measure over this number.
Yeah, of your outdoor
Yeah.
occupancy.
Right, we're not talking indoor and
Yeah.
outdoor. we're
So
talking-
almost like if you're over the number of 70,
Yeah, you know, as soon as it changes your occupancy, then I think.
Well, yeah, there's probably a threshold where it
Yeah.
bumps up against, building code, where if you have everybody inside packed and outside,
Now
then
you've
your
now
overall
changed your
occupancy
occupancy.
for your plumbing
Yeah.
and fixtures and things
If
like
that happens,
To me,
we have a
that's, to me,
great
that's easy,
sale.
but maybe it's not.
yeah.
That would be awesome, why are we
Yeah,
complaining about
that
that,
should be a good
right?
thing.
Except
No,
for
but
safety issues.
To
and
avoid the
health
concert, right, just kind of the example you're giving, as extreme as that is.
What if Mike, David?
But then I would love to have concerts like that coming to town, right? So I mean, do it.
Smoky Hearth had a band out playing on the sidewalk there, that's what they do there.
I know, I don't think that's what, I think Mike was talking like Journey comes to town. Don't stop. Yeah, David.
If it would help, council, Kelly and Mike and I could.
That's what I was just gonna say.
That'd be
You
great.
guys,
Yeah.
you guys deal with
For you
it,
guys
you
to
know,
do
come up
it,
with
and
something that works
yes.
for you and let us know.
And we can come back to you, okay.
But I would-
You're the experts.
But in the meantime, can we go ahead?
Yeah, in the meantime, can we contact those other owners?
Yes.
tomorrow?
Especially,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yep.
Pretty clear.
Start handing out checks.
Oh,
Everybody
yeah,
likes
I'll
that.
hand out checks.
He just went to a
No,
meeting, I
nobody's
think
gonna
there's
do
something.
Just wait till after July 1 on that one, no. You get the other ones to get going.
Mike, we're updating the SDC methodology for sewer.
Yeah, we can just change that table and that would solve the entire problem for sewer.
Let's come
It's a
with
long
that.
way to get to that.
All right, are we good on that conversation?
Yeah.
All right, we'll do a little bit of a break here before our meeting at 7.
Thank you.
I didn't see it.
Call the Sandy City Council meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Carrie, will you please call the roll?
Counselor Beadsall? It's okay.
Here.
Counselor Smallwood?
Here.
Counselor Hamlin?
Present.
Counselor Lee?
Here.
Counselor Exner?
Here.
Counselor Schultz? Here. Mayor Foley?
Here. Welcome everyone to our city council meeting. We generally start our meeting with a review of tonight's agenda. I will eventually call for any changes to the agenda. We will then go into a public comment period. Now, there is public, we do have a legislative order dealing with our public safety fee that's later on in our agenda. We will be taking public comment for that specific item. So our earlier public comment period is for any item that is on our agenda or not on our agenda, but that does not pertain to the public safety fee. Then we'll go to our consent agenda, and then we'll have resolutions on our master fee schedule update and our supplemental budget. And then we'll have our ordinance, which will be our public safety fee, and that will be a hearing in which we will have public comment for that specific item at that time. We'll then go into a new business for energy savings performance contract on water meter audit and testing. And then we'll go to a city manager report and our committee and council reports. Before we do all of that, I skipped over, sorry, Oregon Impact. I believe Rich is here. We will have you towards the beginning of our agenda so that you don't have to sit through all of that. So with that, any changes to tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the public comment portion. You will have 5 minutes to speak. If you decide to speak, please start with your name and your address. Public comment at this time for anyone here for public comment. I actually have a public comment tonight.
Council President, will you set the timer?
I'm setting the timer right now. I
3 minutes.
just realized that.
name and address, please,
Yes. Stan Pulliam, 18751 Pacific Avenue, Sandy, Oregon, 97055. So my printer's not really working that well, so it's all really small in case I lose my part in this. So last fall, Councilor Carl Exner rise to provide public testimony about a friend of his in our community who was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. He used this as an opportunity to do something a little different in order to highlight and bring a little more attention to an issue that many of our neighbors here in Sandy deal with in their daily lives. I found that to be an incredibly unique moment for our council, and perhaps something that may serve as a special tradition here in Sandy to be used, albeit sparingly, when something rises to a level. I told you I'd lose my spot. When an issue hits you enough to rise to a level and your gut strong enough to take such an action. It's this evening, councilors, that I rise to provide public testimony on an issue that's had a very important impact on me recently. After returning home last weekend from our usual family activities, I became aware of a former classmate of mine at Sandy High School, one of our current residents of Sandy, that tragically made the decision to take their own life, leaving behind a young son. This is on the heels of another classmate and prom queen who I grew up with, who remained in the area, who a little while back had also made the tragic decision just a few years ago. These are two recent local events that's had an impact on me. There have been countless more whose impact on their family and friends is also heartbreaking. They highlight a statistic released recently this past week that the rate of suicides among millennials is up 35% in our country. As you're aware, I grew up here, and I've always felt passionate about our town. That said, when I decided to run and eventually won the office of mayor, I had no idea the sheer level of responsibility and paternal feelings I would feel for our community of Sandy. It's these feelings that compel me to act. The gavel that I use each meeting is inscribed with the words of Winston Churchill that says, "It's never action I fear, only inaction." So tonight, it's time we begin to take some action. Tonight, we will make a major step in the implementation of a public safety fee to adequately fund our police department that comes in contact on a daily basis with some of our community's most vulnerable citizens. While major, this must just be one step in a holistic direction that addresses the growing preventative services needs for a quickly growing community. It's time as council that we begin to provide leadership and a strategic vision for our outstanding employees in our community services department that work with so many segments in our community, such as youth, seniors, disabled, and our growing homeless population. Tonight, I'm announcing I'm appointing one of our local citizens, Maggie Holm, to serve as my mayor's liaison to the Community Services Department. Maggie has worked for many years in various service roles within Clackamas County, including Sun Village up the mountain as a youth residential counselor, with Ant Farm as a youth services coordinator, and most recently with Clackamas Women's Services for the past 5.5 years, working with domestic and sexual violence survivors. As a result of these experiences, Maggie is perhaps uniquely qualified to help us in our efforts, and I sure appreciate her willingness and eagerness to step up and volunteer to help out. Her plan is to start by putting together a steering committee focused on social, health, and human services for our city. She envisions bringing stakeholders to the table such as police, fire, social services, and community service organizations. It's her plan to utilize that group to develop recommendations on how to move forward with a strategic plan around increasing resource accessibility and development. It will also be a goal for this group to secure grant funding for a community health assessment to help lead to the strategic plan and implementation. As we come out of our budget planning cycle, like you, I'm keenly aware of our tight financial resources and the strains that provides in our services that our quickly growing community demands. We must continue to be nimble yet proactive. We are lucky to have community members like Maggie who are willing to step up and assist us in meeting the needs for our special community in which we all live. In the meantime, please take note and spread the word that we currently refer individuals struggling with thoughts of suicide to Clackamas County Mental Health at 503-655-8585. And the National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 1-800-273-8255. Thank you. All right, any additional public comment? Seeing none, we'll move to a presentation by Rich Clark with Oregon Impact.
Thank you. My name's Rich. I'm with Oregon Impact, and we've been working the last few months here in Sandy, distributing information packets about youth substance abuse prevention, things that adults could do to block up their marijuana, keep it away. We do focus mostly on marijuana. It was a grant from the Clackamas County gave us a grant to do this based on the tax money that they received from the sale of marijuana. And I just want to say I got 25 businesses came on board and helped us out here in Sandy. The reception was it was well received here, and that was great to see. And we just presented an award to the local KFC. They went above and beyond in getting our message out. It was kind of a groundswell campaign, word of mouth to just try and increase overall awareness. And they went above and beyond getting our message out. And so we presented them with an award. And if you're able to stop by and just tell them thanks for all their efforts, we would certainly appreciate it. And that's all I've got.
That's
Thank
great,
you.
thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, is there a certain day, time that you're gonna present the award?
It's
or-
actually already been presented.
Okay, great.
But
Yeah,
they
we'll-
weren't able to come because, well, they're serving chicken.
Oh.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Oh, yeah, Jim.
What kind of programs did the 25 businesses participate in that were helpful?
We had an information packet that dealt with basically the concerns of marijuana on the developing brain. It was targeted more towards middle-aged school kids. And because most of the businesses are franchised out and aren't allowed to, like, we had posters and just some information and tips for parents and things they could do to protect kids and how to talk to kids about the situation to try and prevent it. So the 25 businesses all accepted a packet and encouraged their employees to read through the information and then go, and talk to a few people at home. And that's, like I said, we were hoping to just raise overall community awareness by that. And so, yeah, there's 25 packets out there with information floating around.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very
Thank you,
much.
appreciate it.
Yep, have a great night.
Thank you, too. All right, moving on to our consent agenda. Open for discussion.
I make a motion that we approve our consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Petzl, second by Counselor Smallwood, that we accept our consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to resolutions. Jordan.
Tyler's going to join us here to do a brief overview of your master fee and schedule update. This was discussed at your June 11th workshop when we reviewed the proposed changes to the fees for this next fiscal year. It wasn't a long list, but definitely some changes. So we'll briefly summarize those and propose for adoption.
All right, so the first item that was being updated is the records request fee. This is just being increased to match what the current average cost of the staff member doing the work would be. Planning charges are increasing by CPI for the 12-month period ending in April, so 2.7% across the board. Council had noted previously that they'd like to see a lot more frequent, smaller changes than large, significant changes that don't happen for 4 or 5 years. So we're trying to implement that CPI-based rate increase with that.
I was just gonna, Tyler, can you explain for the audience what CPI is?
Yeah, so CPI is the Consumer Price Index, and essentially it's just, in its simplest form, kind of an average increase in goods and services that, the average consumer would see an increase in.
Inflation.
Inflation, exactly. That was a really choppy answer, but there you have it. In the Public Works Departments, there were a couple minor changes. The first, public improvement plan review and inspection fees, and we kind of got into a pretty good discussion with this at the workshop, and the issue with charging, small projects don't pay enough, and large projects pay too much, and trying to level the playing field with the new fee table with those. And then in SDCs, for water, we're using a different form of CPI, essentially the construction cost index, which showed a 4.6% increase for the 12-month period ending in May, which was the most recent information we had available. So we're just updating the water SDCs with that rate. And the same thing with the transportation SDCs. Water rates included an update to the metered use from the fire hydrant, which we currently only charge for water consumption. This fee would include a deposit, sort of a day-by-day rental fee to encourage construction or other individuals to use the meter, get what they need out of it, and then return it so that we can get that out for other residents to use. And at fire hydrant flow test, which again, there's currently no fee for this service, we're essentially just wanting to recover the operating costs to provide those tests to the public. And finally, an increase to the fiber service from $39.95 to $41.95. This increase, as Councilor Petzl can attest to, has been kind of in the pipeline for quite a while. It's been in Sandy Net's long-range financial plan for the last few years. It's built into the current, or the upcoming biennium's budget, and really it's just a very modest increase that, for a service we haven't increased in quite some time. And then the important thing to note, no increases or changes rather in water or sewer rates, given that we're currently doing a rate study. So we'll be bringing back those proposed increases to council at a later date. And lastly, no public safety fee is included in this document. We're waiting to see the results of the ordinance later tonight and at the second reading in July before we officially adopt any sort of fee with that.
Questions? Comments? Motion to adopt the resolution?
One question, get my head straight here a
Councilor
little bit. Okay, these are gonna be in effect within 30 days, is that correct?
These will take effect on July 1st.
So that'll be less than 30 days,
Yep.
okay?
They could take effect immediately, but we're just timing it to coincide with the beginning of the new biennium.
Great, all right. That's it for me.
Councilor Smollett?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2019-10, a resolution adopting changes to the master fee schedule.
And I'll second.
Motion by Councilor Smallwood, a second by Councilor Exner. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I just want to thank staff. We've, for several years, even prior, before a lot of us were on council, we've asked for updates, small incremental updates, so that our community can kind of adapt to some of these easier. And so thank you for doing that and getting ahead of it. Really appreciate it. Moving on to the next item, supplemental budget.
Yeah, this is again, Tyler's gonna review the changes that we're proposing for the year end. This is really to clean up as we come and wind down the end of a 2-year biennium. Not a whole lot of cleanup actually, and Tyler will summarize those because frankly there's been some supplemental budgets already throughout this biennium and some transfer resolutions and appropriations. So really just a couple items that we'd like to straighten out before we close out this fiscal year.
All right, so a brief overview of supplemental budgets and local budget law. If a fund is changing by 10% or more, we're required to do a public hearing, and we notice it a little bit differently. The proposed changes that we have in this resolution are all less than 10% of the fund total, so we're able to just adopt them at a regularly scheduled council meeting. So no public hearings required tonight for these. In the general fund, we have 3 changes, the first being in our legal department. We've just had an increase in legal expenses. There was a change in city managers, a change with some of the council members. We've been utilizing our legal services a little more in the past couple months. In addition to that, we're currently going through negotiations with the police department, which has an added expense in legal fees. And so we're expecting the need to increase our total appropriations in this department by just over $18,000 so we can get through the rest of the biennium. In the police department, we kind of anticipated there would be another little bit of cleanup before the biennium ended. As the staff report notes, we did a supplemental budget earlier this fiscal year and didn't account for the total cost of overtime. We did a best estimate, but unfortunately overtime expenses came in relatively high during the same time, and she can add a little bit more to that as well if you would like. But during this time we had one officer move on to another agency, we've had a retirement, so there's been some open positions that we haven't filled, which we could talk a little bit more about when we move on to the public safety fee piece. But essentially there was kind of a shortage of staff, especially in the records department as well. A lot of overtime going on there.
We also had an injury.
An injury, so there was an
Just a year
officer
out for a knee.
And as council knows, overtime costs can just accumulate very quickly. So Chief's done his best to mitigate those, but there was some costs that he was not able to keep down, and as a result of that, we're proposing a $100,000 transfer out of contingency and non-departmental to cover the overtime expense in the police department. And then lastly, in the general fund would be accessing contingency funds to do two intra-fund transfers, one to the legal department and one to the police department, so we have a balanced program in each of those areas. Any questions on general fund, or should I move on to?
Counselor Exner.
Yeah,
Yes.
what is, you're taking an awful lot out of our contingency fund. What's the remaining balance on that?
That's gonna drop our contingency down to about 120,000 for the rest of this fiscal year, so 2 weeks, about a week and a half. This will not have a significant or really any material impact on the biennium 1921 budget, given that we're already seeing revenues coming in excess of what we projected for our end of this year. So
Okay.
property tax revenues continue to come in strong. We've had good franchise fees from Northwest Natural and PGE. So, essentially the excess that we're seeing at the end of this fiscal year is just gonna roll forward in a beginning balance, and kind of, this will be a wash for the 1921 biennium.
So there's a couple different options that we had to clean up the budget. We could have moved appropriations from other departments and kind of played the shell game. This department's coming in under, this department's coming in over, let's move here, there. The police department had some, revenue changes with citation revenue. So we could have gone into that level of detail. When Tyler and I were talking about it, my heart kind of stops when we're using contingency, because knowing that we've had this situation we talk about in the budget about our contingency getting drawn down. But starting to see some of those revenues come in towards the end of the year now that we're going to be, we're going to have more of a surplus than what we projected. Made this look like it's going to be budget neutral going into the next biennium. So to make it the cleanest way to clean up this year end, to transfer the monies, get those departments within balance, I felt like this was probably the cleanest and easiest way to do that for tonight.
Good.
He asked me, answer
Yeah.
my question that I had.
I
so
think it was
no
all one
question.
question. Yeah. Okay.
In the sewer fund, as you know, we have a wastewater system facilities plan. I think council is well aware of that. The current budget had only $250,000 in loan proceeds for some of the initial phases of that project. The actual loan amount that we've received is $450,000, so this is just some cleanup to address loan proceeds and then expenses, obviously, that we're paying with those loan proceeds. That was a very minor housekeeping piece. And then finally, in the transit fund, so with the expected receipt of STIF funds this fiscal year, Andy and her team had added some new services and entered into an agreement to complete the transit master plan. STIF funds are not going to be available now until first week of July is our best estimate. So we've already expended some funds, don't have the revenue coming in to offset that. Fortunately, the employer transit tax has been coming in very strong and steady, and so this is just to adjust the budget to account for the additional revenue from the employer tax, pay for the expenses that in theory would have been funded with the SGIF funds, but the lag time in receiving those, so again, just some cleanup. And then I just noticed on the resolution that the screenshot with all of the actual information is kind of cutting off the far right column. So when and if you decide to adopt this resolution, you can mention it as amended and we'll get that cleaned up so the resolution has the full picture on there. Any questions on sewer and
questions or
transit?
comments? All right. Enter into discussion. I just say I'm excited to get this budget cycle behind us, and to get into one where we've put in a lot of work, and I don't want to 2 years from now I'll be upset if we keep having to go into the contingency. Obviously, contingencies are there for a reason, but I like to be using those in bleak economic times, not in the best of economic times. So, Councilor Lee.
Yes, I would move adoption of Resolution 2019-12, a resolution adopting a supplemental budget for BN 2017-19.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Councilor Lee, a second by Councilor Peetzold. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. moving on to ordinances, public safety. I will open I'm opening the hearing now, right, guys, staff? This the time? This is the moment? All right. We'll open public hearing for ordinance 2019-11, establishing a public safety fee. I will call for abstentions from the hearing body. Call for any conflict of interest from the hearing body. I'll call for the staff report.
Well, thank you, Council. Again, I'll turn it over to Tyler to give you the summary on the public safety fee that's proposed for your consideration tonight. But I just wanted to say this is the result of at least 5 meetings plus the work that the Budget Committee put in studying this issue. And I do have to really appreciate the Council's work in looking at this in a variety of different angles and considering the alternatives. You heard reports from our police chief. You heard the comments from the Budget Committee and their recommendations, and you considered all the options that you had available to you to maintain and increase our policing services for the city of Sandy. So tonight would be the first reading of the proposed ordinance. As the Finance Director Tyler said, our proposal is to present the ordinance adopting the public safety fee and then bring that back for the second reading plus the resolution establishing the fee amount on July 15th. And so that would be a second opportunity for the second reading in July. So with that, I'll let Tyler summarize the ordinance.
So, as council is well aware, this has been a many meeting process to get to where we are tonight, and so staff is excited to kind of have this clean version of the ordinance in front of you. And essentially what this ordinance is allowing the city to do is charge a public safety fee. Without having this ordinance in place, we would not be allowed to do that. And this ordinance is drafted such that it is very specific towards public safety services. The revenue from this proposed fee would not be allowed to go into any other department other than the police department for the specific, intent to help pay for the operations of the police in this community. As we talked about, previously, the fee would be billed with the normal monthly utility billing. It's kind of the cleanest way to do so without incurring other administrative costs. So definitely the most economical on our part. Based on residential units, so if you have an apartment complex with 5 units, pay the fee 5 times. If you have a single family house, it's 1 dwelling unit. Staff is working on getting final numbers for multifamily units as well as commercial industrial units, and those will be brought back at the next council meeting in July with a more fine-tuned fee as well as the number of dwelling units in each of those different categories. Fee will be imposed monthly, as I said. There's some program administration clauses or sections within this. Essentially, the city manager is responsible for the administration of this chapter in the municipal code. We'll work together in researching whatever needs to be researched to make sure that this fee is implemented successfully and continues to be successful going forward. I know that council had some questions previously on waiving of the fees or reducing fees, and that's something that we're still gathering information on with our financial software, how we can best implement that. To be clear, that we don't really waive other fees, and so that's something that, again, that we can explore, but we don't have any additional information to offer the council at this time. And then the effective date. So some of you are kind of aware of how the ordinances work, but we do a first reading, we'll do a second reading, and then 30 days after that second reading, it becomes effective. So if everything goes according to the outline in the staff report, we would do the second reading at the July 15th meeting. The fee would then be implemented effective August 15th, which would be just in time for the August utility billing cycle. So we'd start seeing revenue trickle in at the end of August, 1st of September. And that's the quick overview.
Thank you, appreciate it. I will call for public testimony. If you would like to provide public testimony, please stand at the podium, state your name and address for the record, and we'll provide 5 minutes for testimony. Yeah, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. My name is William Guthridge. I reside at 37595 Coralburst Street here in Sandy. I just wanted to take a moment, starting out here, to applaud this council for considering this public safety fee, and to state that I'm very pleased and happy to hear that the council's considering this. As a Sandy resident, it would mean a great deal to me to have additional police available to keep my city and community safer. I don't think we can measure deterrence. We need look no further than our neighboring cities to see what under-policing does and to see the consequences of that. But every time we have a police officer present, we can't measure the lives that they may save, the tragedies that they may prevent just by being present. And I know that it's safer for our public safety professionals to have additional staffing to cover each other and to keep our city safe. In conclusion, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for considering this step, and I hope that the city will continue to support its public safety as this city grows so that we can remain one of the safest cities in Clackamas County and the state of Oregon. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Great. Any other public comment for tonight? Okay, seeing none, I will call for staff recap and recommendation. You tired of talking about this, Tyler?
I mean, I don't have a lot more to add other than, the budget committee, I should have mentioned this in my earlier synopsis. So the budget committee essentially kind of started the most recent phase of implementing this fee when we, through our budget hearings, or budget meetings rather, determined the need for additional officers and tried to determine how we were going to fund those. Council, took that input from the budget committee and ultimately helped us get to where we are tonight with finding outside revenue, not impacting other departments, and making sure that other services aren't cut so that we can increase the police services. And I think that staff is excited to be where we are tonight. I know Chief is looking forward to the possibility of getting some new blood in the department and getting fully staffed again. Excited to be at this point.
Thank you, Tyler. I am now looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Peatsold, second by Councilor Exner, that we close the public hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is closed. All right, so calling for the discussion by the hearing body. Discussion.
Well,
Yep.
I think we've discussed it quite a bit, and I think I appreciate the staff's time and willingness to allow us to discuss and question for enough time that we needed to do that, and so I appreciate that the thoughtfulness that we've all put into this on both sides of the topic. So just want to say I appreciate that.
Councilor Exner.
I also want to compliment the staff for getting all the work put together like this. It's really crucial, and I've had lots of conversations from the public that has reinforced that, so thank you very much. I had two statements and a question in one of those. One is have we ever had any requests for waiving any of our fees? I know we haven't waived any fees in the past, but has anybody ever come to us that you know of?
Not that I'm aware of. There may have been, other requests maybe with SDCs or something that someone else has handled, but I have not had any formal request to waive any fees. I'm not aware of any in my tenure here.
I don't know if I consider myself the representative for all the aged people in this
Here we go
community,
again.
but I will put that myself in that particular area. I guess I would prefer us not to entertain waivers until we start getting some, and it seems like people, even in my category of age, have limited income at times, but until we get that point, I guess I'm not sure that that's really, a waiver would be the kind of thing that we'd want to go out and start doing right away. But my statement, my vote would be, let's wait to see what happens, see if we get anything before we start making a lot of effort on your side. Appreciate all the work you've been doing so far.
Well, I'd just like to thank staff for, this has been kind of the first major initiative that I've been involved in since becoming mayor. I remember, Tyler, I think I was talking to you a month before even getting sworn in as mayor about this, and you're like, slow down, buddy. Here we are 6 months in. I just feel it's so important that we adequately fund public safety, as mentioned at public comment tonight about neighboring communities. And I've always said, we're kind of in a neat, I always say neat, I guess it's not a neat spot, but we're in a unique spot here in Sandy where we can kind of see some things happening as a result of our growth and some things on the rise, whether it be maybe a little rise in homelessness or in petty crime. And this is where you address those problems, is now, before they grow and exacerbate into something that's hard to handle, like in, I think, other communities are facing. And so I really like seeing us do this proactive approach to it. Really like the fee over other funding mechanisms, because that fee grows as our population grows and the stress is on our public safety. I would say, and Councilor Small was talked about, I have, other councilors have, is these fees are tough, right? Because you can't discriminate on them based on income and different factors. I had a conversation with County Commissioner Sonia Fisher on the vehicle registration fee. She kind of had those same problems with not being able to discriminate on the fee if you have a really wealthy type car versus more of one within means. And so we talked about trying to get a legislative fix, provide councils with more power over these kinds of fee structures. So that might be kind of something we talk about in the future. But just wanted to thank council for 5+ meetings and all everything that comes with that, from social media contact on apps I see on Councilor Exner, and just thank you everybody for getting the word out and talking about it, bringing us to this point. So appreciate it. Councilor Smalley.
Nope.
Lee.
It's okay.
That ladies.
Yeah, hey you.
Well, I'd also like to give special thanks to the chief, who's made do with what he has and done an excellent job.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Not seeing no more discussion, I'm looking to call the first reading by title only.
Ordinance number 2019-11, an ordinance establishing a public safety fee. Nice and short.
All right, now I call for a motion to approve the first reading.
I move that we approve the first reading of the recommendation.
Second.
Counselor to approve the first reading of the recommendation. Second by Counselor Lee. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anybody want to talk about a second reading tonight, or do you guys want to hold that off to the next meeting?
I'd like to hold for me.
Okay. Provide another week for public comment.
Mhm.
I think, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I'll add one more thing too, just so council's aware.
Yeah.
We are continuing to work on outreach and making this as transparent as possible. So water bill newsletter, FAQ on the website for how, why, all that good stuff. So we're going to just continue to communicate.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
So we're looking to authorize energy savings performance contract, water meter audit and testing. It's a change order. Love those.
Yes, it's probably not a really change order, it's more like a change in scope in the original contract. Some of the councilors will remember in September, they authorized they approved a proposal from McKinstry to provide the technical and financial analysis for an energy savings performance contract for converting all of the city-owned streetlights to LEDs, and to test some water meters and see how efficient they were, and see if we could, by replacing older water meters, all the water meters in the city, gain enough efficiency with the more accurate meters to pay for the cost of the conversion. At the time, we were pretty certain that the street lighting conversion would pay for itself, so the council did authorize that contract, but we weren't too certain about the water meter conversion, and so the council just authorized a kind of a quick analysis of the conversion, and then told staff to come back in the future if the results from that were promising enough to proceed. And based on the information from McKinstry, the street lighting project, including replacing, we have about 100 of these laminated wood poles that are in bad shape, and it doesn't take much to push them over. Including replacing those as well as the street lights, the energy savings would pay back the project cost in about 7 years. And then that's a guaranteed payback. They're confident enough in that number that if we didn't meet that payback time, that McKinstry would guarantee the difference. And then with the water meter project, they haven't done the detailed analysis yet, so the simple payback is about 11.3 years, and once the more thorough analysis is completed, they'll be able to come back with a guaranteed payback number for that. So the original analysis cost about $16,000 for the street lighting alone. I'm sorry, for the water meter conversion alone, and to do the more detailed analysis as well as the investment grade financial analysis would be about another $25,500. So the total cost for the water meter portion of the project is about $41,500.
Good question. So I was recently at a Metro Mayor's Consortium meeting, and we had a presentation by PGE, and they have a lot of grants and assistance for communities on these kinds of projects. Have we reached out about getting some? Yeah, the payback cost in here is net of the incentives, both from PG and Energy Trust of Oregon. Those a $2.3 million project does total about $23,000, so about 1%. And then with some of the LED lights and stuff, is there any? We've talked in the past about counters and trying to figure out where our traffic flows are coming from. Is there ways to include any of that smart technology, or is there better ways of getting those kinds of counts? Well, these would just be street lights, not traffic signals, but they would be, they would have controls on them where, we'd be able, they would report themselves as they fail, we get a little report, and, people who might have like festive holiday displays would be able to dim the lighting to suit the intensity of their display and not have it detract from that, so. Well, that sounds pretty cool.
That'd be great for my neighbor.
Any other questions or comments?
I think this is great. Since I've been on council, I've thought of the smart light technology and what we can do, and just the energy savings for the city itself. PGE's changed the way their formula is for charging cities, so it's made it more attractive for us to do that in the past. And some of the technology as being an innovative city. With our technology we've used as a smart city, it's a great step forward. The idea that paying back is 7.5 years or something for those laminated poles and stuff like that, I think it's a very small time frame, especially given the the liability that those things have if they were to come down in the road, or they have been ripped up from other things, and so. It would be nice to get those finally out of our city and replaced.
All right, Councilor Exner.
Just to real quickly, I add to Councilman Peetzel's comments that this is really good. I've got a number of folks who've been watching those wooden light poles getting a steeper and steeper angle over the years, and I appreciate that. The liability on that may not be really high, but it certainly doesn't look very good for us to see that sort of stuff. A question, Mark, we had talked about at one time maybe they're going off when nobody was around and turning on as people walk towards it. Would that kind of technology be involved in it, or it would just be a light
These
sensor?
would be dimmable, so you would have the ability, like at 2 in the morning to 4 in the morning, you could dim them and reduce them. But there's really no incentive in the PG rate right now. Apparently they're looking at that, but right now the rate structure just gives you a reduction in the cost for the use of LEDs. There's, streetlights aren't metered.
Right.
So, you can't quantify how much energy savings are. But in the future, as more cities do this, there'll be more pressure on PG and the Public Utilities Commission to change their tariff so that it does does allow you to take advantage of all the technology you can install with smart lights.
Pay is one thing, but just the act and the ability to be able to reduce our energy quotient, I think, is really important. It gives us, for me anyway, a feeling of we're doing our best bet that we can to reduce the amount of cost it has for the overall system rather than just for the city of Sandy. And I guess if there's ways of even reducing it even more, I'd be inclined to do that to a point of safety. I don't think that we want to cross the line where we might not have a safe feeling in our cities, streets and such, but I really don't want to push anything more than just that. Thank you for working this through, Mike. Appreciate it.
Councilor Lee.
Yes, I've done some work in the past with PGE, and I got a notice from them a couple weeks ago that they have a grant program now for charging stations, and I wondered if that was another program you might be looking at in the future.
Yeah, we did discuss that. It's kind of a staff time commitment there. It's really don't have a lot of staff time available, but the circuit for the decorative streetlights on the both sides of Proctor, that's a 240 volt circuit, so you could run kind of not the super fast charge, but a reasonably fast charging station off of that for electric vehicles. But some of the drawback there is too, that's where some of the prime on-street parking is, and you have to eliminate that or dedicate it solely to electric vehicles. So there's more issues related to that other than just putting in the charging stations. You have to kind of work with the neighboring business owners about eliminating or dedicating on-street parking just to one type of automobile.
How long does the average charge take? Anyone?
Well, it depends if you have a Tesla or a different type of product.
Does it? I just say, yeah, I got to imagine, considering we want people to stop, shop, eat here, might not be the worst idea to become known as a charging station USA, on the way to Central Oregon and Bend for people to get their charge, get a good bite to eat.
Comment a little bit about that. Tesla did put their stations so many miles away from a downtown metropolitan because you need charging along your way, and so we do have some at Fred Meyer's, but that does bring a point. We did look at that years ago when I was first on council about having that out here. Scott Lazenby had looked at it in some grant programs and stuff like that, but the technology has changed quite a bit. Portland was doing that in their downtown areas, but you're right, as people move forward and then don't have a long range, that this may be a stopping point. They go to Mountain Mocha or in their downtown area to draw more people here for half an hour as they head over the mountain.
Stop, spend your money, and move on.
Yeah.
John had his hand up first.
I was just going to make a motion to authorize the staff to sign it. So
he was jumping in front of you.
I'll just jump in front of you and tell you what I ever experienced. I had an electric car for almost 5 years, and if you charge it down to 0, it took about 4 hours on a normal 110. But if you got a supercharger, you can do it in about an hour.
Okay.
And to me, it would work out very well because you didn't have to charge it back up to 100%. Go down to, in our case, went down either to Walgreens or to Fred Meyer's. If you're really low, just plug it in for the 45 minutes you're at Fred Meyer's. And would beat you up to 50%. Put around, but more.
Well, we digress a little bit. Flying cars next, Mike. You want to talk about it, or would you rather wrap this up?
Let's work on that next.
Okay. You have a motion, Councilor Hamlin?
I've got a motion to authorize the staff to sign the change order for the more detailed technical analysis and investment grade financial analysis for the water meter replacement project.
I'll second.
I'm going Schultz.
Please do, yes.
Yeah.
By all means.
So I have a motion by Councilor Hamlin, a second by Councilor Schultz. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Mr. Wheeler, you're up.
Okay. So first item I want to share is some indication that ODOT will be able to find some additional funding for the Eyck Vista Sidewalk project on Highway 26. And just a big thank you to the mayor for providing some lobbying and with his connections and skills there, perhaps get some motivation for some additional funds. So, you know, I think the move here for the council, we brought you this item a couple weeks ago to get some direction on whether we should do a no-go, go or no-go. And I think right now we're recommending we hold off on giving any signals to ODOT until we get some certainty on that funding, which we're being optimistic that we can secure some additional funds for that design.
He said $1 million.
Okay, it's out there, $1 million.
Yes.
We just don't know how secure that is.
Well, he said $1 million, and the more we hold him to it and say that out loud, I
Yeah.
think it becomes $1 million.
We certainly want the
How about
process to go
two?
through.
Yeah.
We want this to
Yeah.
happen.
So we're just basically just closing the loop on that for the time being. That will proceed as if the project is moving on and not informing ODOT that we're stepping out, that we're still interested, and we look forward to additional funds being added to the project.
Thank you.
Great job.
Yeah, thank you, the mayor. Second item, just to brief you on, is we're going to begin temperature monitoring in the Sandy River, and I'll start here shortly. We have 4 locations, I believe, identified for that work. That's going to run for 5 years to get great data for the Sandy River as it relates to the proposed preferred alternative to put our outfall in the Sandy. On that, we are still waiting for the legislative session to wrap up so we can have some more indication of whether we have some dollars coming to the city for additional studies in regards to these type of temperature analyses, and also looking at green alternatives. Some of those tours that we went on, we see some great work there with the natural systems, and doing some more degradation work and studies to understand more of the impact on the river, and studying other alternatives. So we hope to get more good news about funding in the next couple of weeks as well on that.
Can I just say, I talked to someone who teaches for trackers, and the more I learn about that organization, I just believe that there's just a wonderful marriage in the workings there for that Roslyn Lake location. Just
yeah, that excites us too.
Yeah.
Can I make a real quick comment as well there? I'm associated with a number of the watershed people on the Sandy River side of the world, and surprisingly, there is almost no temperature measurements of any kind on that river. Some short, small pieces here and there, but really this is a big thing for the Watershed Council. They think this is really a very positive, very supportive. Will give them some data that they have been looking to find in a professional way for quite a few years. So kudos to the city manager and even Mary Smith that appreciate getting this stuff done. Of course, we need to do this, but it makes a difference.
So the communication for the project will start to ramp up too, as we're heading into some big decision making for the council. So getting the word out about the wastewater system facilities plan and what's proposed there, and trying to get ahead of the bills, and when that decision comes before council on the rates. And to Councilor Exner's point earlier, that might be the time where we start to hear more about rate relief programs and requests for that next year. And then finally, just we're heading into a very busy season for our Community Services Department, with a lot of exciting events for the department, but also for the community. So we do have the Longest Day Parkway this week on Thursday. Just using this opportunity to market this awesome event where city staff will be stationed at different locations to share information and share what we do. So we're looking forward to that, although Thursday looks like it's the only day that may have a little bit of a sprinkle happening at Oregon Luck. But we also, of course, the 4th of July fireworks show. Special thanks to Clackamas County Bank for sponsoring that great program. It's at Sandy High School for the fireworks this year. And then the Sandy Mountain Festival, the parade on the 11th, and the festival there, and carnival on that weekend of the 13th and 13th and 14th. And the chalk art contest too is the weekend before that. So a lot of neat stuff coming up in the next couple of weeks. So.
Can I ask a question about the Longest Day Parkway?
Mm-hmm.
Are we doing hot dogs again this year?
Mike, are we doing hot dogs?
I'm sure we are doing.
I think we're doing hot dogs.
Ice cream?
Yeah.
To a turkey dog.
Yeah. I think that was the plan.
I thought he was gonna be worried about traffic outside his house.
Oh, no.
For the smell of hot dogs.
No, no. One of the great things that we finally discovered after, I mean, how many events have been on this thing was that if they come pre-cooked, the mayor has a lot better time getting those hot dogs off those grill.
Okay.
Hey, this mayor, he's camping every week, and I know how to work a grill.
Not when you have to make 400 hot dogs.
I know, they're lined up.
Yeah, if we,
But when
if
they come,
if we get it preheated,
if we get them preheated, it's way better when they come than when they come frozen. We've learned this. Last year was a great success on the hot dog thing. But anyway, it's just it'd be great to have them that way again.
The Culver Fire Department does that with their hamburgers too.
Just one final administrative item. We polled the council on the August dates. Thank you for getting back to us on that. It looks like the 26th is probably, I don't think we have full attendance, but pretty close. If you want to meet another time in August, that Monday, the 26th, looks like probably the best date out of those.
And on that, I would
They're
just
gonna
note,
split, so-
I would just
Yeah,
note that we're
wasn't-
trying to slow the schedule down a little bit for the summer, both for ourselves and for staff. We've been running at a pretty robust speed here. So even on that, as we get close to these dates, let's take a hard look at, what's coming up on the calendar and how important those meetings are to have, or if there's some items that can maybe wait till September. So.
I was just going to demand a recount. I like
I like
carrying
you.
I didn't see the let's not meet option, and I selected the third or the second one, so I switched to the let's not meet option. So
You can
it may impact the number. I said that out loud too. Let's not meet.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilor Schultz.
I wasn't able to attend the library board meeting this month, but they are finalizing their strategic plan with Link, which is the countywide library system. It's a set of imperatives like equitable access, youth commitment, connecting communities, enhance user experience, and making sure we're ensuring sufficient funding. Their plan includes initiatives for meeting each imperative, as well as objectives that show how we're going to measure our progress in each area. So it's looks like a pretty tangible way to, measure how we're doing as a library system. And that's it for that. I'm excited to go into the summer season. I know for our family, the events that we have this time of year are super fun. I'm excited for the parkway and everything else that Jordan mentioned. So I hope we see a lot of good turnouts, even if it rains a little.
Oh, don't say that.
I think it's like 10%.
Yeah.
What
Oh,
guys
okay.
worried about?
Councilor Exner.
Just a couple things. I was able to meet last Wednesday with what was the leftovers, I guess you called, of the Friends of Sandy Pool, and had a chance to talk to them for 2 very intense hours during their lunchtime. And I think there were some negative things there, but I think really at the end, it really came down to is do they want or not want the pool to be open? And I understood from some of their comments to me was that they do want it open, of course, and the big message I made to them was is if you want it open, let's get together and be partners in terms of finding a way to get the word out that we want to have this election coming up in May to be a positive event. Everybody wants to see that pool open. Let's find a way to advertise it, get connected, and do the work that's out there. So I think that when I left it, they were a lot more upbeat and a lot more optimistic than I think that they began with that particular meeting. Certainly some of the questions weren't all that, were kind of tense, but I think that was really something they needed to hear. So I'm glad that I had a chance to do that. Came away with everything intact, so I didn't think I got too badly hit. So another thing I've done is we had the Art Commission meeting last week on the 20th, and What I want to report is we did talk about the chalk art, mural restoration update. They really are excited about what we talked about at the workshop. That really made a difference to them. They were to take that back, and everybody's excited about being able to spend the money first off, and also to be able to move forward on several of the projects that they have in front of them. And I think that really appreciate that. That was a message I heard from several of the commissioners was thank you for spending time talking with them and getting that one forward. So that was really good. They are looking for some judging of some of these chalk art contributions coming up the weekend before the parade. So if there's some timing, and we'll send out some messages about what time, what date, all that sort of thing.
Well, I'd have to abstain. I know of an 8-year-old that would very much
Is that
count on
right?
my vote. So.
We are looking for some more judges. So if there's some of that interest out there to check out some great chalk art, I think that'd be well received that way. And then the last thing I want to talk about is I had a chance to go and visit the community campus here this past week in terms of another item. There was, well, the watershed folks were looking for a possible place to land with a temporary office, but I'm not sure how far that's going to go because it looks like they're going to go somewhere else. But in doing that, I was able to visit the Sandy Net office, and very impressed. These guys got their act together. I'm really envious, though. They have this, must be 20 feet wide of TVs up on the wall there. I just see the whole world being produced. You know, you saw that in.
They're working in a Buffalo Wild Wings?
Something like, I have no idea what the background is. I noticed they had an electric car there, and they had several other things I was questioning whether or not they should have those. But I was really impressed by all the technology. And
March Madness party next year. Yeah, Sandy.
Yeah, I think it'd be well worth it for some of the different council to go check it out, see what's going on in there. And like I said, I was very pleased with how they were doing things. Saw that Carlos Manzano was on front page last week in Sandy Post. And he was there with all this stuff on his head and everything, answering phone calls as we walked in there. So kudos for them. So
very cool.
And I'm going to leave it at that.
Great, thank you. Councilor Lee.
Yes, I have a
Try
handout.
not to steal all my thunder.
Oh, I've got handouts and everything.
Yes.
Oh, thank you for this.
That way.
Yes.
Several of the important bills that were environmentally responsible were passed today and in the last couple days, and we've talked about some of them before. But first of all, the City of Damascus unincorporation legislation did pass and is now effective.
So you're saying they're not a
just as
city anymore?
neighboring- Pardon?
They are or not a city anymore?
They are
returned to the-
unincorporated as of June the 17th. It was
Oh.
affirmed, and if there is a petition, they have 30 days to petition, and then the Oregon Supreme Court would look at it.
Yeah.
So
So
it's an
today.
It's in the
expedited
courts.
process. Right, right. But on the environmental bills, we had followed the plastic bag bill ourselves, and House Bill 2509 is actually enacted now and will be effective in January of 2020. So you can see what the fines would be and some of the various parts of that bill. The bill requires a 5-cent or more charge for any single-use bags. And another one was the plastic straw bill that also passed and is effective January 2020. That applies to restaurants and convenience stores, but it has a different applicability to fast food establishments. If you're at a restaurant, then the customer has to ask for a straw. But if you're at a fast food chain, then the server has to ask you if you want one. So I'm not sure why that's so critical, but it is.
I thought we're getting like a self-serve fountain drink station in like fast food.
If it's a self-serve, you're supposed to have the straws available.
Okay, good.
The styrofoam bill did not pass, and a good reason behind it not passing was that there is now a recycling company in Tigard that recycles it, so they want to see if that's going to work.
Before you pass on, I see that there's a lot of fees and fines and
Yeah.
enforcement. Did you remember who's gonna be enforcing all this? Is that our police?
DEQ is part of it. On the plastic bags, it's DEQ.
They are gonna hire a bunch of people? you
I
think?
don't know how they're going to do that, not my
Forget
problem.
Okay, all right.
But
Curious. Okay.
House Bill 2020 is the cap and trade bill, and they started talking about it at 2 o'clock today, and when I left tonight, it was still on the floor being discussed, and there's still no vote. So hopefully there will be a vote tomorrow, one way or the other. On the back side of this, we came up with some goals at the closing of the C4 retreat, and you can see there what the 5 goals are. A lot of people were interested in having a transit service plan that would connect countywide. And then also advancing the Clackamas 2020 T projects, but that's Metro, so not our bag. The housing tool card deck implementation, it was very interesting. They gave us little cards of various kinds of projects that could be done to create more affordable housing. So I bulleted some of those down below just so you can get an idea of what they might be. Then on the vehicle registration fee, 50% of that goes to the county, 40 to the cities, and then 10 goes into a special investment fund. That should be about 1.1 million a year, and they're looking at how to put together a program where that money would either be given for the county to transition some of their roads to the city, and the city would receive them in an upgraded fashion, or it could be capital projects, so.
Well, may I just, because I'm gonna go into it too, so we might as well go into it a little bit now.
Right here?
So on the jurisdictional transfers, what they're talking about is basically the county is willing for their county roads to put 2 inches of concrete on their road improvement, but no urbanization. So the difference between, so if you think of urbanization, sidewalks, storm drainage and all that, the average per mile for urbanization is about 4.5 million. The average per what they're gonna do in their upgrades to their county road is about $150,000 a mile, right?
Yeah.
So like,
We've been here
big
before.
difference.
We've been here before.
And it's like what I told Chair Bernard is if I was chair of Clackamas County, I would 100% want to put the onus of these streets onto the cities and off of my budget. As the mayor of Sandy, there's no way that you want to, even though we only have one county road and all that. But so that's a bit of kind of a pass that they're trying to do. It's only $1.1 million, and we spend an entire day almost talking about $1.1 million to go countywide. One thing I would note on that, though, is that they did give emphasis towards rural communities on that, because they believe one of their initiatives is can cities leverage other dollars, our own street funds and stuff to make things happen. The metro communities have other monies that they have available. So since it's only 1.1 million, there seems to be an emphasis on teaming with rural communities to implement those dollars. So something to keep in mind as we're looking for some different opportunities.
Yeah. And DMV is going to collect the money starting in January, but the county is going to give us our money every 6 months so that there's not as much cost in taking care of sending that out. We also talked quite a bit about affordable housing. And I was amazed at the figure that came out for Sandy. From very low to low income residents in Sandy, it's 55%. So we should look at the toolkit card deck and see if we might be able to implement some of these programs. There's a number of tax credits that could be taken up by developers. And just take a look at these and get some ideas.
Can I ask a question on that 55%? Is that the Sandy zip code or is that the Sandy city limits? Because a lot is referred to the zip code or the census blocks.
It's supposed to be the city limits, but I didn't see the data behind it.
My understanding is they snagged that off of the housing assessment that we recently did, and then we submitted to them to take it off.
Right.
So,
Looks familiar.
yeah.
so I'll pass it on to you then.
Oh, I would
Or
just.
whomever's next.
Yeah, oh, okay. I would just add on, just real quickly onto the housing is, there was some interesting initiatives just like this, mixed use with commercial that we could team up, especially when you think of some of the vacant lots that we have. First, I just want to thank you. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jan,
Thank
for
you.
submitting this. And all these initiatives are things that we can do for housing, but a lot of them also go towards other kinds of development as well, right? But when you start thinking of some of these communities that we can, and housing, when you think of what we're trying to do on Pleasant Street and other areas, we're pretty lucky here in Sandy and trying to fix the county's housing issue. I mean, we have 80 acres of expansion property that can be kind of mixed use and different things that we can do, which is pretty exciting. So, anyways, I'll move it on to Councilor Hamlin.
Nothing to report.
Councilor Smollett.
Okay, the Parks Committee is currently working on the RFP for both the Bornstead Park and the Bluff Dog Park for shade structure. They haven't quite decided, and it's still in the works of what type of structure that will be. But for your knowledge base, the structures will be located at Bornstead somewhere between the splash pad and the picnic area. And then at the dog park, it'll be where that you see that curved area where people tend to sit. So they're looking at those two areas. Other than that, I was notified of some regional quarterly trails meetings that I'll be looking at further. Might be an opportunity to further get some grants and things like that for parks and trails. And then a little public service announcement for Sandy's Helping Hands. I'm sure you guys are all aware of them, but they just started a Sandy's Helping Paws for our residents who have pets that they can't get vet services for because they can't afford them. We all know those are very expensive or need some help with food. So if you feel so generous to donate, they're looking for donations on that. I think it's fantastic. So.
Councilor Peetzold.
I just want to thank staff for the many meetings we've had for budget. Both Jordan and Tyler, thank you. You've done an amazing job. Great work there and hard work. So I appreciate that. We all appreciate that. And then also I'm pretty proud that we identified something with staff about the outdoor seating that we discussed earlier, and that we're really making a difference in the livability of our community and promoting that. And so that's what we're here for, and our residents will benefit from that. So that's all.
Yeah. So on committees, we just did C4 collectively, and other ones, the mountain festivals obviously coming up in July. I just wanted to say something about June and July for staff. I think one of Jordan's first few weeks, he goes, when does it slow down around here? Is it July? I go, oh, we just get going in Sandy in July. And while we talk about trying to ease some of our schedule in the summer, I just want to recognize everything from our police department and everything that you do is for these community events and the parade and things that happen. We have the 4th of July festivities that take place. Got the Longest Day Parkway. It just becomes, it's everything that makes kind of Sandy wonderful. It happens in the summer, but that's only because of the hard work that our staff puts in. So thank you so much for the overtime making that happen. I also had a comment on the SDC meeting today. Thank you to staff. You were very proactive in doing that. I wanted to mention staff reports. Thank you for staff reports. Let's try to keep those updated. I don't bring this up to nag, but just to say, for example, the economic development, Dave Snyder had that comment. A couple of us picked that up in the staff report. Then staff was very proactive in bringing it before us. And I mean, that's how we're all supposed to work together and do things. So we rely heavily on those staff reports. More importantly, we appreciate them. I think it makes us better counselors. And so thank you for
We look
doing
forward
those.
to reading them.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just on some upcoming events, Wednesday, June 19th, 9 a.m. It's a chamber morning perk at Guide Dogs for the Blind. Saturday, June 29th, big event, Party on the Patio. Clackamas County Bank puts on for Zigzag at the Zigzag Inn that helps out a lot of local organizations with their fundraising efforts there. So that's all I have for my report. With that, we will adjourn until our executive session. Thank you, everybody.
Do you know when wine in the boxes? Is that
It's a
part
tough
of
one. It's not part of the mouth.